Dust rolled like smoke across the ridge road, dry and bitter on the evening wind. A battered stagecoach lurched, wheels groaning, then shuddered to a stop. Hinges squealed and the door swung wide. She stepped down, Clara, clothes torn, eyes hollow, skin gray with miles of fear. No scream, no name, just breath scraping against her throat. The wind shifted, metallic, sharp with rain and rust. Across the fence line, Eli Ward waited, shotgun resting across his lap, hat brim low, eyes lost in shadow. He didn't move, didn't speak. Only the slow rise of his chest, steady as a ticking clock. Clara staggered forward, dust clinging to her hair, and caught his stare. A plea cracked loose, raw and thin. Don't. Take me back there. No words from him. No questions. Just the faint lift of his hat brim. A decision sealed in silence. Behind them came the faint thunder of hooves, riders on the tree line. Too far to see, close enough to fear. Clara swayed, knees buckling, and the dust swallowed her as she dropped at his boots. Eli leaned forward at last, one step and then another. Strong arms, calloused and sure, scooped her from the ground, gentle, final. He turned toward the house. Hinges moaned, the door creaked open and warm dark waited inside. Shotgun still across his lap, Eli carried her through without a single word as the wind carried the hoofbeats closer. Firelight waits inside. But danger rides the tree line. Fire cracked loud against the stone hearth, each pop a sharp echo in the small room. Bitter coffee hissed on the stove, its scorched scent curling through the air. Clara crouched close to the flames, torn shawl clutched tight around her shoulders. Her breath trembled with the heat and the cold memory riding in behind her. Eli stood near the table, shadow long against the plank wall. He watched without a word until the silence turned heavy. Then a single sound cut through the crackle. Name? Her eyes flicked to the window, wide and restless. A pause, then a whisper. Clara, nothing more. Outside, night stretched wide. Coyotes cried from the far hills, their calls thin and distant like old ghosts. Inside, the clock ticked slow. Hoofbeats lived only in memory, but they still filled the room. Clara's lips moved again, fragments, half swallowed. Banker, ledger, promise broken. Each word tasted of fear. Eli listened, jaw tight, eyes dark with something older than the storm outside. He asked once, voice low enough to blend with the fire. Will he follow? Clara's head dipped. A single nod. Yes, always. Metal clicked against wood. Eli slid a shell into the shotgun, slow and careful. Another, then another. Each snap made her flinch, though he never raised his eyes. The firelight caught her wrist as the shawl slipped. Scars flared pale against the orange glow. Eli saw them, said nothing, only the faint tightening of his grip on the gun. Night deepens, as old wounds wake with the storm. Night thickened around the ranch house, a slow tide of cold pressing against the windows. The fire burned low, its last sparks snapping like tiny bones. Clara slept curled near the hearth, breath quick, face caught in restless flickers of dream. She whispered in fragments. Ledger books, a banker's sneer. A locked door that never opened. Each word broke the hush like a crack of distant thunder. Eli stood in the doorway, boots planted on creaking boards. Her murmurs dragged something deep from his own dark. Memory bled through the years. A younger Eli, lean and unshaven, standing helpless in the same pale moon. His sister's face lit by lantern glow. Debt men closing in, ledgers in hand, rifles across saddles. The banker's voice, smooth, cold, final. He'd reached for her arm. Too slow. They pulled her away down the ridge road, her cry swallowed by hoofbeats. The same hollow moon above, the same dust rising like smoke. The room and the past blurred until only the smell of wet leather and fear remained. Eli gripped the doorframe, knuckles white, jaw locked. No words, no questions. Just the old wound splitting open. Clara stirred awake. Her eyes met his across the dying fire, sensing the weight of something shared. Why are you helping me? She breathed. Eli didn't answer. He stepped forward, set a rifle against the wall with a quiet thud, then turned toward the porch. The door moaned open. Cold night wind rushed in, carrying the scent of storm. He walked into it without a backward glance. Dawn will find the ridge road waiting for his return. Morning broke sharp across the ridge, cold slicing through the last threads of night. Frost clung to fence posts, and the wind carried a bitter tang of earth and distant rain. Then came the first hoofbeats, rattling the silence like a warning drum. 3 riders emerged from the tree line, black coats snapping in the wind, eyes scanning the ranch as if weighing it for prey. Their leader, tall, lean, with a face carved in contempt, rode slightly ahead. Mr. Cray. He smiled, predator-like, teeth catching the weak morning sun. "Lost a girl," he called, voice smooth and dangerous. "Pretty, scarred, owes me." Eli sat on the porch, shotgun resting across his lap, hands steady as carved stone. No greeting, no denial. Only the slow tilt of his hat, the shadow over his eyes telling more than words could. Cray leaned forward in his saddle, grin widening. "She'll come with us, or the ranch burns." Clara pressed herself behind the cracked curtains, heart hammering, breath uneven. Her fingers clenched the edge of the wood, knuckles white. Eli's hand stayed firm across the shotgun, muscles coiled, ready. "Not yet," the banker tipped his hat. "Tomorrow. She rides back. Or you pay," a silence stretched. Hoofbeats faded into the distance, leaving smoke of threat lingering like a shadow over the ranch. The wind shook the shutters, carrying the unspoken promise of fire, of return, of confrontation yet to come. The ridge waits, and a storm gathers behind those black coats. The ranch felt smaller under the weight of the banker's threat. Every creak of the floorboards, every gust rattling the shutters, carried the memory of hoofbeats and black coats. Clara paced near the hearth, whispering prayers low, words barely audible over the crackle of fire. Her shawl clung to her arms, twisted tight as though it could hold her together. Eli sat at the edge of the table, knife in hand, sharpening with deliberate strokes. Steel rasped against stone. His eyes never left the ridge road, where the horizon bled purple under the fading dusk. Each snap of the whetstone was measured, precise, a silent rhythm to match the pounding of Clara's heart. When the light dimmed, Eli saddled his horse and rode into town. He returned before darkness fully swallowed the prairie, leading an old friend, Deputy Grant, badge tarnished, eyes cautious, hands empty of real power. Inside, the 3 shared bitter coffee, steam rising and curling like smoke over whispered plans. Grant's voice was low, grave. "Cray owns the sheriff. The law won't help." Eli's jaw tightened, eyes flicking to the ridgeline. "Then we end it here." Clara stepped forward, voice steady, unshaken for the first time. "If you fight for both of us." Outside, clouds bruised, deep purple, low and heavy. A lone hawk circled the ridge, wings wide, silent. Its shadow stretched across the ranch like a warning. The storm was coming, and it would not wait. Hooves pound closer as night tightens around the ridge. Night pressed down heavy, thick with storm clouds. Rain whipped the ridge, cold and sharp, drumming on the tin roof. Hoofbeats rolled like distant thunder, growing louder with each heartbeat. Lantern light bobbed through the darkness, Cray leading, his 3 men spreading wide across the ridge like vultures circling prey. Eli waited at the fence line, rifle steady in his hands. Lantern snuffed, eyes fixed on the approaching shapes. Nearby, Deputy Grant crouched low against the barn's shadow, every muscle coiled. Clara gripped the porch rail, shawl slipping to reveal pale scars, her breath visible in the cold night air. A voice cut across the storm. "Bring her out." No reply, only silence. Then a single rifle crack split the night, sharp as lightning. Horses reared, hooves thundering, mud spraying. Chaos erupted on the ridge. Grant fired warning shots, each one sending men stumbling. "Last chance," Eli said, voice low, final. Cray sneered, spat, then backed off, hissing, "This ain't done." Lightning split the sky above, illuminating the ridge in stark white. When the flash faded, the riders had vanished into the darkness, leaving only the smell of wet leather, gunpowder, and the storm's raw power. Dawn will reveal the damage and the quiet after the fight. Dawn stretched pale and thin over the soaked earth, the morning light weak against the shadow of storm clouds. Smoke curled lazily from the banker's distant camp, drifting across the valley like a warning. The ranch stood, battered but whole, yet a quiet unease clung to every board and shutter. Clara sat on the porch steps, scars bared to the soft morning light, shoulders trembling from the cold and memory. Eli approached without a word, carrying a heavy blanket, and draped it over her. No words, no questions, just the weight of protection. Deputy Grant tipped his hat, reins in hand, and rode off toward neighboring ranches, warning them of what had passed, of what might yet return. Clara let the blanket fall over her lap, exhaling, for the first time without fear constricting her chest. "You stayed when no one else would," she said, voice steady, quiet but unbroken. Eli's eyes swept the ridge road, dark and distant. "He'll be back," he murmured, low and certain. The wind rattled the shutters, a soft, eerie clatter, whispering of storms still to come, of shadows that had not yet faded. The ridge waits, and the question of who will stand remains. Evening settled slow and heavy over the ranch. Clara tended the hearth, embers glowing warm, shadows flickering across her scars, softening their edges in the firelight. Each movement, careful, measured, as if she could smooth the past into the present. Eli sat nearby, knife in hand, sharpening with a steady rhythm. His gaze never left the dark ridge beyond the window, where shadows pooled and waited. No words passed, only the rasp of steel against stone and the occasional sigh of wind through the eaves. Voice low, Clara broke the silence. "Will it ever end?" Eli didn't answer with words. Only a look, steady, unflinching, a promise of protection, of unfinished war, lingering in the space between them. She turned her eyes outward, toward the camera of our minds, meeting the unseen listener. "If you were me, would you run or fight?" The screen held her stare, firelight reflecting in eyes that had seen too much, while the wind whispered across the prairie, stirring the tall grass like ghostly applause. If you're still here listening, hit that subscribe and stay for the next ride. The ridge waits, and tomorrow brings new choices to face.